The Playground Promise. My name is Sandhya Kumari, an IAS officer serving as the district collector in Madhavpur for the past 2 years. For those unfamiliar, IAS stands for Indian Administrative Service. We're civil servants responsible for government administration and public policy implementation. But that's just the official description. What it really means is that I'm caught between the people I serve and the political machinery that often works against them. Every day is a balancing act between bureaucracy and real human needs. Some see this position as a path to power and influence. For me, it's about something much simpler, giving others the opportunities I barely had growing up. You see, I come from Nayapura, a small village where education beyond primary school was a luxury few could afford. My journey from there to here wasn't easy, and that's why I can't stand by when I see children's futures being compromised for profit. That's exactly what happened 3 weeks ago, when a playground became the unlikely battleground for something much bigger. The crowd roared as I stepped onto the makeshift stage. Hundreds of children, parents, and community members had gathered in the very playground we had fought so hard to save. Colorful banners with "Our Playground, Our Future" fluttered in the breeze. Just 3 weeks ago, this same space had been marked for development, a fancy word for the shopping complex that local politician Rajan Sharma and his builder friends wanted to construct here. Sandhya Mom, Sandhya Mom, the children chanted, their faces beaming with pride. Little did they know that they were the real heroes of this story. As I adjusted the microphone, my mind flashed back to how it all began. It was a regular Monday morning when Priya, a 12-year-old from the government school, managed to slip past my assistant and burst into my office. Her school uniform was wrinkled, and her eyes were red from crying. "Ma'am, they're taking our playground," she said between sobs. "Where will we play? Where will we practice for sports day?" I offered her a glass of water and asked her to explain. According to Priya, construction workers had arrived that morning and started marking boundaries around the school playground. Their teacher had tried to stop them, but was shown papers claiming the land had been reallocated for commercial development. "I promise I'll look into this," I told her. "Now, let me drop you back to school." On our way to her school, I noticed the expensive SUVs parked near the playground and men in crisp white shirts surveying the area. One of them was Vikram Singh, Rajan Sharma's right-hand man, known locally as the enforcer for their land deals. When he saw my official car, his smile vanished. "Madam Collector," he nodded stiffly. "Just some routine development work for the city's progress." "On a school playground?" I asked, stepping out of the car. "I don't recall any approved projects here." "The papers are all in order," he said, handing me a file. "Signed last month. The school can use the municipal ground 2 kilometers away." The documents looked official, with all the right stamps and signatures. But something felt wrong. The approval had bypassed my office completely. "All work stops until I review this properly," I ordered. "Remove your equipment by evening." His face hardened. "Rajanji won't be happy about delays. He has invested heavily in this project." "Then Rajanji can come speak to me directly," I replied, walking away. That evening, my phone rang. It was Rajan Sharma himself, his voice honey-sweet but with a sharp edge. "Sandhya ji, why cause unnecessary trouble? This is just an unused piece of land. The mall will create jobs, generate tax revenue. I can even build a small play area inside it for the children." "Mr. Sharma, that playground serves 600 students. It's not unused, it's essential. Be reasonable." His voice dropped lower. "Everyone needs to adjust sometimes. Maybe your hometown could benefit from some development projects too? That village of yours, what's it called? Nayapura? Still doesn't have proper roads, I hear." The mention of my village made my blood run cold. This was both a threat and a bribe. Thank you for your concern about my hometown, Mr. Sharma. I'll see you at the town hall meeting next week. I hung up, my hands shaking. Not from fear, but from memories flooding back. Nayapura, the village where I grew up, where my father worked as a farm laborer and my mother stitched clothes to put food on our table, where the nearest high school was 12 kilometers away. I still remember the day I told my parents I wanted to continue studying after primary school. Girls from families like ours don't need more education. My father had said, not unkindly, we can't afford it, and you'll be married in a few years anyway. But my mother had other ideas. She took on extra stitching work, and my father found night shifts at a factory 20 kilometers away. Together, they scraped together enough for my school fees. Every day, I would walk 3 kilometers to the main road, then catch a crowded bus for 9 more kilometers to reach school. During monsoons, when the dirt paths turned to mud, the journey could take 2 hours each way. The school itself was a blessing and a curse. A blessing because it had dedicated teachers who saw potential in me. A curse because it had almost no facilities. Our library was a single shelf of donated books. Our laboratory was a box of basic equipment brought out once a month. And our playground was an empty plot of land with rocks cleared away just enough to avoid major injuries. Yet it was on that bare patch of earth that I found joy, running, playing kabaddi, practicing for district sports meets. It was there I learned teamwork, perseverance, and that winning wasn't about being the strongest, but about being the smartest and most determined. When I ranked first in the state examinations, a newspaper carried my story. Village Girl Defies Odds. That article caught the attention of an NGO that offered me a scholarship for college. Years later, after I passed the UPSC exams and became an IAS officer, I returned to my village. The primary school was still there, but there was still no high school. Children still walked for hours if they wanted education beyond the basics. I made a promise to myself then. No child should have to choose between education and basic childhood joys like having a place to play. Back in the present, I knew what I was up against. Rajan Sharma wasn't just a politician. He controlled the local construction mafia. The playground land was worth crores of rupees, and he'd already sold promises to investors. The next morning, I called a meeting with my team. We need to find out how this approval happened, I told them. Check every signature, every date. My deputy, Rajesh, looked nervous. Ma'am, Sharmaji has connections in the state capital. This might go above our heads. Then we'll need evidence that can't be ignored, I replied. And we'll need public support. That afternoon, I visited the school during lunch break. The children were huddled in corners of the school building, their usual playground now fenced off with tin sheets. Would you fight for your playground? I asked them. Their resounding yes gave me my answer. Then I need your help, I told them. But it won't be easy. We formed a plan. The children would create drawings and essays about what the playground meant to them. They would take these home, along with facts about the legal status of the land. It had been designated for educational use 50 years ago. The parents and older siblings would then reach out to their neighbors, creating a network of awareness. Meanwhile, my team would investigate the paper trail. What happened next surprised even me. The children didn't just take papers home, they became ambassadors. 10-year-olds explained land use regulations to their grandparents. Teenagers created social media posts that went viral locally. Parents formed WhatsApp groups to coordinate efforts. Within days, my office had uncovered irregularities in the approval process. Signatures had been forged, dates altered. The file had never actually passed through the proper channels. Sharma's response was swift. First came the threats. Anonymous calls suggesting I request a transfer for health reasons. Then came offers. Donations to the school for a modern indoor activity center. When these failed, He tried public pressure. His supporters claimed I was blocking development and costing jobs. They organized a small protest outside my office. But they hadn't counted on our community network. The day before the town hall meeting, where the matter would be officially discussed, something extraordinary happened. Children from the school, accompanied by parents, grandparents, and neighbors, went door to door across the city. They didn't just talk about the playground, they talked about what happens when public spaces disappear, when children have nowhere to play, when private interests trump community needs. By evening, videos of these young advocates were trending locally. A 10-year-old girl's impassioned plea to save the only place where she could practice athletics went viral. "I want to be like Sandhya Mom one day," she said, "but how can I if I have nowhere to run?" That night, Vikram Singh appeared at my doorstep, but instead of threats, he looked defeated. "Rajanji wants to know your terms," he said quietly. "The playground stays," I replied, "non-negotiable." "And in return?" "In return, we don't pursue the matter of the forged approvals." He nodded slowly. "There's something else you should know. Rajanji. He grew up in your village too. He was 5 years ahead of you in school. He remembers you walking those 12 kilometers every day. That's why he mentioned Nayapura." This revelation stunned me. I had a vague recollection of an older boy from the village who dropped out to work with his uncle in the city. That was Rajan Sharma? "Tell him I remember too," I said. "And tell him that I'm building a high school in Nayapura next year. He's welcome to contribute to that project instead." The town hall meeting that followed was merely a formality. Sharma announced a change of plans due to community feedback. The playground would remain, and his company would instead donate funds to upgrade it with better equipment. Which brings me back to today, the celebration on the saved playground, with newly painted lines for kabaddi, volleyball, and athletics tracks. As I addressed the crowd, I spotted Rajan Sharma at the back, watching silently. Our eyes met briefly, and I saw something unexpected: respect, perhaps even regret. "This victory belongs to all of you," I told the gathering, "especially the children who taught us that even the smallest voices can create the biggest changes." Later that weekend, sitting on my balcony with a cup of tea, I watched the sun set over the city. My phone buzzed with a notification. A new video was trending locally. It showed children playing on the saved playground, with a caption, "When a community stands together, magic happens. The playground promise." I smiled, knowing this battle was won, but many more awaited. There would be other playgrounds, other schools, other public spaces threatened by private greed. There would be more powerful people to confront, more systems to fix. But for now, I savored the victory, because sometimes the greatest achievement isn't building something new, but preserving something precious. And sometimes the best way to honor your past is to fight for someone else's future. If you've ever fought to protect something that matters to your community, share your story in the comments. Remember, change doesn't always start with those in power. Sometimes it starts with a single child brave enough to walk into an IAS officer's office and say, "They're taking our playground." Oh,